the passion, take some action, and with a little time, just be patient, make a statement, try to enjoy your life. They'll try to kick you while you're down. They wanna rise up while you drown. They wanna fill your head with doubt. They're silently scared that you'll figure it out. I'll make it look like I'm losing, won't bother hiding my bruises. And when they finally think you're wounded, then it's your chance to be ruthless. They don't wanna see me care. Anytime I make some progress, I can see that they compare. I think everyone's against me, maybe something in the air. Am I paranoid? I swear a void is forming.
All right, what is up, Utes fans? This is Joseph back with the Utah Utes Football Digest. Excited to be here. Good to see you guys. Larry says, "Go Utes." Tat says, "Hello, Ute fans. Good to see you guys." And Larry says, "Hey, Tat." So, hey, Tad, as well. Good to have all you guys here. Excited to be here. Please do make sure you guys like the video as you come in. And it just helps get it out to more Utes fans. Also, please do make sure you guys comment in the chat. Seriously, I love hearing your guys' opinions. I really do love interacting with you guys. Honestly, I could just make videos and upload them. I make these live streams because I really do think they're a lot more fun. So, please do interact. It makes it a lot of fun. And then finally, subscribe to the channel. Seriously, we're going to be putting out Utah Utes football content all off season, and it should be a great time. We got Dante Guardi on with us tonight. I'll bring him on here in 1 second. I do want to touch on something before I bring on our guest. So, this video is going to be about recapping the start of the season and projecting what the second half will look like for the Utah Utes. First, though, I do want to touch on USC a little more now that it's had a couple days to bake. It does feel like we've gotten a vibe. What a huge win that was for this program, and it has me really looking forward to the last 5 games of conference play, just how much of a huge stretch of games this could really be. Cam Rising looked awesome. Kincaid looked awesome, and this offense looked downright amazing, if I'm going to say so. I really think they looked fantastic, right? I do want to address the USC fans. I think someone said it in the chat already. I think it was Larry. Take the loss, guys. USC fans, take the loss. It's kind of sad. It's a bit of a joke. That roughing the passer call really wasn't that bad. Ours against UCLA was significantly worse than that. You guys had a handful of vital no calls just like that, that really weren't called. And then you had a handful of gray area calls that did get called. It happens to everybody every game. You guys and you had a bunch of justified penalties. Just take it. You guys got beat, and that's that. We were the better team, and we outplayed you in the critical moments. Cam Rising had almost 500 yards of total offense. Dalton Kincaid had almost 250 receiving yards against you guys, and your defense and you guys just got outplayed in general. Good game, but stop making excuses. Go Utes. All right, now let's bring on our guest. Dante, figured I'd touch on that a little before I brought you on, man, but super excited to have you here. Why don't we go ahead and let you jump in, man? We haven't talked to you since the USC game. They've already heard my thoughts. Tell us what you're thinking.
Yeah, you hit the nail right on the head, I'd say. Refereeing is part of the game. You said the Karene Reed one was significantly worse. I really don't think that was significantly worse. I thought they were pretty much the same. It was just D.T.R. was on the sideline and acted out a little bit more than Cameron Rising did. But that's just the name of the game. You don't see Utah fans blaming the entire outcome on that one Karene Reed roughing the passer, like you see USC fans blaming the whole game on 2 roughing the passer calls. There was a safety that should have been called in the end zone because of a hold by a USC player. There were a few other holds in there as well. There were a ton of things that the refereeing was abysmal both ways, I'd say. It was one of the worst refereed games I've ever seen. But it went both ways. That's just the name of the game. That's football. That's how it goes. So I think it's pretty ridiculous how people are blaming the refs. Like I said, it was ridiculous both ways. Utah was the better team. You pretty much hit the nail right in the head. You took the words right out of my mouth. So good to see we both have pretty similar reactions to the outcome of the game.
Yeah, and it's not that I don't agree. Like, to me, it was just that call, the roughing the passer call on Cam Rising. Sure, like, you can disagree that should be a call, but by definition, basically, that is roughing the passer. It's like, yeah, I don't love that gets called, and I don't love roughing the passer as a general rule, but that, like, you can't just, like, it was obvious the guy knew Cam threw the ball, and he just runs into it, just like Karine Reed. There was no need to do it. He just pushed DTR for no reason. It was just a stupid play on his part, just like the USC guy just threw his body into Cam for no reason. So, is what it is there. We got a bunch of fun comments in the chat here. David says, really hope we are ready for Wazoo in a couple weeks. Our record against winning teams on the road has been abysmal last couple of years. Florida, UCLA, Oregon State, BYU, SDSU. Yeah, for sure. My number one thing I'm thinking about is there's two big games. I mean, you never know when we're going to get a minefield, and there's probably going to be one other, surprisingly close game just because it's the Pac-12 and there's a lot of talent. But the two big ones, if we can get through Washington State, which I feel very confident we will, we got to come prepared and we got to do our job against Washington State. But if we can do that, and then it's the tough ones going into Oregon and beating them at home, if we can win those two games, we're probably in the Pac-12 championship. What are you thinking about the rest of the season there, Dante?
Yeah, with the close games, I'm not too worried about Washington State, honestly. They were a team that I was lower on the consensus to start the year. They picked up a fluke win. It was a fluke win, in my opinion, against Wisconsin. So in my book, they really aren't on par with some of these other winning teams that we faced and fell to. I mean, even last year against Oregon State. Like, I think that team that we lost to, again, that Oregon State team last year, is significantly better than this Washington State team this year. And, their running backs out for a while. They got a couple of other injuries here and there, so they're pretty banged up. They couldn't even beat Oregon State's backup quarterback last week. So I'm really not too worried about them. And I don't really think Cameron Ward's that great. I think the passing volume kind of makes his stats look better than they actually are. I mean, this is a guy last year who committed 40 turnover-worthy plays at the FCS level. This year, the jump to FBS, it's been all right. He hasn't really done anything crazy, but he hasn't been terrible. So, I mean, I think he's pretty average. I think their roster in general, they got some really good guys around the roster. I mean, Ron Stone is probably a Pac-12 all-first team selection. Armani Marsh, their slot corner, probably the best slot corner of the Pac-12, going to be another likely all Pac-12 first-team selections. They got talent all over the place, but I just don't think they match up with Utah very well. For the rest of the season, Oregon's going to be really tough. That's a given. Oregon's going to be extremely tough. I think that's the best offensive line in the conference, arguably the nation, and they got 5 running backs that can all gas you at any given moment. Not a lot of teams at the college level have 3 running backs, nonetheless 5. They're very deep at that position, probably the deepest team in the nation at that position. And Bo Nix has been playing out of his mind. So Utah's really going to have to bring it in terms of stopping the run. And in that game, I'm kind of expecting another shootout. I'm kind of expecting Oregon to have a lot of great running plays and for Cam Rising to have to match that, which he did well last week, but now on the road. And what's going to be a rambunctious environment. It's going to be a lot tougher. And then the last game, Colorado, I could low-key see that being a close-ish game. I mean, if Utah beats Oregon, kind of a hangover spot. And we just saw Colorado beat Cal at home. Utah versus Colorado, we've had some blowouts over the years, but there have been some very close matchups despite Utah being a far better team, such as last year, which was at home coming off a huge win. So kind of the same scenario. You see Mike Sanford, their interim head coach, kind of instilling a different culture. He's doing a lot of things to bring the team together during these tough times after losing Carl Durrell. So I think that's a team that won't beat Utah, but I mean, probably could give them some trouble. Maybe a 10-point victory for the Utes, something along those lines. I mean, you never really know. It's college football. Anything can happen on any given week. And that's a team that I'm honestly a little bit worried about giving Utah troubles, but not actually beating Utah because I just don't think that's a possibility. But the Oregon game is obviously the big one. That's the one that Utah's got to bring their A game. That's essentially the next Super Bowl. At this point, it's Jim Valvano. It's survive and advance. That's what Utah's playing right now. Survived last week. Got to just survive the rest of the schedule and hope for the best.
Yeah, you really got to wish that Oregon game would have been at home. But I don't know. I mean, as much as you wish that was the case, it's going to feel pretty fantastic if we can go in there and beat Oregon at home. I feel like that would just be such a big deal. I mean, BYU got smashed. I've got Oregon beating UCLA this weekend. It'll be like just team after team going in there and getting beat. If we can go in there and get that win, I feel like, yeah, that'll probably get us to the conference championship. But more than anything, I feel like that'll make us the favorites to win the conference championship. So if we get there, we're probably the favorites once we get there, unless UCLA beats USC and Oregon. But that'll make it that much more exciting. I don't see that happening either.
It's not happening.
That would make the win, but seeing UCLA in the conference championship would make it that much more exciting. So that'd be pretty awesome there. Larry says, should we root for UCLA or Oregon this week? I don't think I honestly, I'll probably root for UCLA. I want them to go to the conference championship so we can beat them. So that's where I'm at with that.
I'm on the opposite side, actually. I like the Ducks. This team, they're really fun to watch. Like, that team is incredibly fun to watch. I really like what they're doing. I'd like to see us play them in the conference championship. Them or USC. Honestly, I kind of forgot about UCLA. They're out of the window now for me. I'd like to see us beat the crap out of USC on a neutral field to really show them who's boss, or Oregon again, because I mean we beat them twice last year, and would be an awesome matchup again because I really like their team, and it would be I'd view Utah a lot higher if they were to beat Oregon twice than say get the revenge against UCLA, because I really think this Oregon team's legit.
I agree that I feel like the Oregon team looks legit. I feel like UCLA. I feel like this weekend is going to tell you about UCLA and Oregon. Whoever comes out the winner, especially if it's a big margin of victory, it's against a very good team either way. So I'm excited to see what happens there. And on that note, let's go ahead and dive into the topics of discussion. So I had sent you some topics beforehand. We're going to talk about a couple different things tonight, guys. But the first thing is 3 guys that the first half of the season, so through these first 7 games, they've surprised us. You know, take it how you want. I took it as in a positive way. But let's hear your thoughts, Dante. 3 guys that surprised you through the first 7 games.
Yeah, I did take it in a positive way, and not necessarily like I wasn't expecting these guys to be good. It's just like, dang, they've really looked good.
Really good.
Number one, I mean, I feel like it's kind of going to be everyone's number one, but it's Dalton Kincaid.
Yep.
You know, after the Keith injury, I was really worried about him stepping up without having the defenses kind of converge on Keithy and leaving him open. But we saw him as the alpha receiver, as the alpha dog of the offense last week, and 16 catches, 234 yards, and you can't make that up. Like, that's literally most ridiculous tight end performance I've ever witnessed. And he showed a plethora of abilities, you know, contested catches, yards after catch. He showed literally everything an NFL scout would want in a tight end. And you got to keep in mind, it's only his 4th year playing football, 4th or 5th year playing football. He didn't start playing ball until his senior year of high school. So, I mean, the sky is literally the limit for this kid. And in the NFL, I mean, he really has top 5 tight end NFL potential. So he's been a very pleasant surprise to me, especially after that Keith injury. Number 2, this was one that honestly didn't really play a factor until the last game, and it's Money Parks. You know, he wasn't solidified a starting role in the preseason. Last week has a jet sweep that goes for a first down, I believe, and then that 45-yard catch that he had, 40-plus yard catch that he had towards the end of the second quarter that really changed the momentum. That was beautiful. I'm really looking forward to see what he does for the rest of the year. And then number 3, it's RJ Hubert. After the Florida game, wasn't too impressed with him, but over the course of the season, his open field tackling has really made up for some of the lackluster performances on the defensive line. And in coverage, he's held it down. You know, had that game-sealing pass breakup at the end, batted down against USC. And he's had some other really enticing flashes throughout the year, such as the pick 6 against Southern Utah. So he's had a lot of good moments, and it's been a real pleasant surprise seeing him hold it down at the level he has, especially when it comes to open field tackling.
That's so funny. So every guy you mentioned either is on my list or was on my list and I erased them and put someone else in. That's hilarious. And I didn't think with the second one with Money Parks that you would say him. I feel like you probably felt the same. It's kind of like Probably. He was kind of a wild card, but it was like his PFF grade, his stats, the fact that he's really stepped up where Solomon Enis, in my opinion, didn't. You know, whether he was injured or not, he wasn't getting it done. And Money Parks looks like he might be able to. And I didn't see him being a huge playmaker during the year. But either way, I'll move into my guys. The first one that I will talk about is going to be the same first one you had. All right. So the first guy is going to be Dalton Kincaid. Obviously, just an animal. I think we all knew Dalton. If you followed these last year, you knew Dalton Kincaid was a really good receiver. A guy that had a lot of ability and had flashed at times. A guy that impressed the crap out of me a bunch last year. There were times where he was a top 5 graded tight end last year. And, even early in the year with Brant Keithy doing a really good job, Dalton Kincaid was stealing a lot of those receptions. Don't forget against SUU, even when we had Keithy, Kincaid broke 100 yards receiving. And I just feel like Kincaid might have been a little overshadowed by the hype that Keithy was getting, because to me, Keithy was the better of the two at the time when he went down. He was looking awesome, but it was really like a 1A, 1B. Like they both looked fantastic. So to me, I always knew Kincaid had a ton of potential, and it was hard for me to put him on this list, but because of the last game and how he stepped into being the premier tight end on this team, I had to put him on this list because he feels like he's taking the next step. I mean, if this guy averages, it's like 70 yards per game through these next 5 games, or maybe 80, 85 yards per game, he's going to break 1,000 yards receiving. He's on track for a very special year. Yardage wise, he's already has more yards right now than he did throughout the entire season last year. He looks like he's about to do some crazy things. I feel like the big solidifier for me was that sideline catch last week where he just jumped up and put it. I couldn't believe he got that ball, dude. But, a guy that really impressed the crap out of me, and I'm excited to see him continue to grow. The next guy is Cam Rising. To be clear, I've always been high on Cam Rising. But after last week, and I think at times in the UCLA game, it wasn't the best game ever, but it just showed me some things that I needed to see for Cam Rising. And it really feels like right now, it doesn't matter what the defense does. Obviously, that's hyperbole, but it's like it doesn't matter what the defense does. Cam Rising can keep us in any game. They could put up 50 points. They could put up 60 points. If they want to shoot out with us, if our defense can't do it, Cam Rising can keep us in any freaking game we go into. And that's a really good feeling. I think sometimes we don't understand how lucky we are to have Cam Rising, how special he is as a talent. Don't forget, probably 50, 60% of quarterbacks starting for FBS college football teams are more game managers with a above average arm. We got a real playmaker on our hands that can really do special things no matter how the defense performs the rest of this year. And my last guy, I actually did have Money Parks written down for my last guy, but I would also say I kind of wrote him down in the thoughts that you wouldn't have him. I'm sure it's kind of same way there. I'll go ahead and put the other guy. So I'm going to put Devon Vele. And the reason I didn't put him at first and I put Money Parks is that I kind of expected where Devon Vele's at, right? Some games where you really wanted more from him, but some games where he really flashed. Like these last 3 games have been awesome. And considering that it's been 3 games in a row with 60-plus yards, 2 of those games at 87 and 94 yards, a guy that's really been putting up big numbers, a guy that's really impressed me. It feels like he has actually become a number 1 receiver. He still needs to be tested, but he does feel like a number 1 receiver at this point. It took longer into the season than we would have liked it to, but it does feel like he's there. I'm super excited to see just how high this guy can fly. I think the ceiling is super high for Devon Vele. So I really hope to see him, take off as the season keeps going. And on that note, before we move into the next topic, guys, please do make sure you guys like the video. Helps get it out to more Utes fans. Also, make sure you guys comment into the chat, get involved. Seriously, ask any questions you want us to spend a little time on. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe to the channel. It goes a long way and helps the channel out a ton. And on that note, let's move into the next topic. So the next topic is going to be 3 position groups that we feel have disappointed us thus far into the year. I'm not trying to spend too much time belittling individual players for disappointing us. I don't ever feel good about that. But looking at groups as a whole, there are a few groups that I think, we expected a lot more out of. Dante, why don't you go ahead and start with your first group?
Yeah, I have a feeling we're gonna kind of
Yeah.
similar here, but it's the defensive line slash front seven as a whole. Sure, 28 pressures last week looked really good, but a lot of those, I mean, Caleb Williams is sitting back there dropping back for 7, 8 seconds. I'd be extremely disappointed if they couldn't get pressure on him after 7, 8 seconds, but they did, and it was clutch at times. But I mean, we can't forget about last week. Like last week was abysmal. A couple other performances have been pretty lackluster, and just overall the lack of consistency has been very disappointing for me. Um, the defensive ends, especially, Jonah Ellis started the season pretty slow. Had a really good week against USC. He was probably the biggest difference maker on the front seven last week, in my honest opinion. But the Van Fillinger inconsistencies haven't been great to see. Gabe Reed has looked good at times, but also pretty questionable at times. So overall, just the consistency has been pretty bad to see, and stopping the run as well. It's just going to all come back to the UCLA and Florida games, because those were the two blemishes on the standings. Obviously, gave up over 260 yards against Florida. Gave up a bunch of running yards against UCLA, specifically Zach Charbonnet. So just the inability to create a consistent pass rush and the inability to stop the run, those have been the biggest things, and those all stem from the defensive line and front seven.
Yeah. And next group?
Oh, that was really all I had, honestly.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
really
no problem.
Super disappointing to me. Like the secondary, I think, has been a little bit lackluster, but I think a lot of that is just because of how bad the pass rush has been.
No, yeah, I agree. I feel like I almost put the secondary in here. I feel like the corners has been weird. It's been like Clark Phillips has been fantastic, but number 2 and number 3 corner has not been fantastic. So kind of a up and down situation there.
I do want to give a quick shout to Malone Mataeli, though, because this guy was the biggest liability for Utah secondary all of last season. And he's been putting together a pretty dang good 2022 season. I'm not sure what the stats are, but I remember just looking at PFF and whatnot and just thinking, damn, he's really come a long way and is playing at a really high level. So I want to give a quick shout to him. And also Zemi Iavon had a terrific game against USC. Super clutch at times, just all around a fantastic performance when everyone else was kind of all over the place.
Well, and I would even say to Travis Broughton, I mean, I didn't watch him like a hawk, but for a guy that's really been struggling most of this year, I thought that was a pretty damn good game for him. I saw a few pass breakups. He was the one that caught the pick at the end, and he had the pass breakup to end it, I think. Or no, it was Hubert that had the pass breakup.
Hubert came in, swatted it down.
Well, I'll go ahead and tell you guys about my 3 position groups that I've been a little disappointed in. The first one's already on the screen. Defensive line, they were a group that I had really high hopes for, with Junior Tafuna and Van Fillinger coming back. Neither one of them has really lived up to the hype. I don't think either one of them has played bad, but definitely it's been really up and down with a lot of low neutral play where they're just not impacting the game. Oh, you got Raising Cane's over there?
Yeah, yesterday it's the leftover water can that I'm still using today.
Man, you got me. Oh, okay, good. I was gonna say you got me jealous. I love Raising Cane's. But yeah, the D line definitely left a lot to be desired. Even up to this point, there were times where they flashed against USC, but the majority of the game, it's kind of like a weird, like, they're kind of containing, but they're not really. It feels like it's like, hey, you guys can't rush the passer, pretend like you're containing. And I think we want a lot more. Hopefully somebody steps up on that D line. The good thing is we have so many guys rotating in and out that someone's got to step up and show, that they can be a playmaker. And hopefully that happens sooner rather than later, because Oregon has a good O-line. I'd really like to see us have some playmakers on D-line when we go into that game. The next group, I know you kind of grouped this in as the front seven in general. The next group for me is linebackers. I was a little unsure about how to put this because, if you guys have been following the channel for a while, you guys know I wasn't super high on the linebackers going into this year. It was a young room that was really up and down with a transfer that hadn't graded out super well. But I think they've disappointed a little, especially really, I feel like they had been doing well for a few games, but then these last 2 have just been rough, where Karene Reed really was the bright spot of this linebacker room. And overall, he's still having a solid year, but these past 2 games, I wanted more out of him, and I wish I would have seen him step up when other guys, weren't exactly killing it. But overall, Karene Reed is the bright spot of this linebacker room, with Barton, flashing and doing very well for a freshman. The O-line is the final group. So it's not that the O-line's playing terribly. They're actually pass blocking pretty well as a whole. The issue is the run blocking. Like, I wanted to put running backs here. I think Larry put running backs in the chat, and I wanted to put running backs here, but I didn't think that was fair. It's like, I don't feel like it's usually the running back's fault why we're not getting yards right now. It's like this offensive line, very small holes, and no one's getting second level. Just kind of like, hope for the best. And we've had times the second half of Florida, we were run blocking our butts off, but then, the majority of the season, the run blocking just has not been very good. And I really hope that's a big emphasis as we head into these last 5 games. If we could see some good run blocking, that would make me feel so good about us getting to the conference championship. All right. All right, and then the next topic, let's talk about some stat predictions, guys. So, you can do it however you want, Dante. If you want to do it based on the rest of the year or the full year as a whole, however you want to do it, but go for it. The first guy let's talk about is Cam Rising.
Yeah, so Cam just coming off without a doubt, the best performance of his Utah career. I believe he's currently at around 1,800 passing yards. Yeah, 15 points. Perfect, right? So I have him projected around 3,000 pass yards and 28 passing touchdowns. Like, these other games, you got to take into account, like Arizona, Stanford, Washington State, Colorado. I mean, Utah's probably not going to be airing it out 40 times like they did against USC. So I'm assuming the passing yards in those games are going to be more around the 200 mark. Whereas in the Oregon game, I do expect it to be a bit more of a shootout because I don't see Utah being able to stop that Oregon rushing attack. So Cam Rising will have to do a lot on his own to make up for some ground lost in that one. So I can see him getting around 300 passing yards in that one. And with that being said, around 3,000 yards for the season. I think that's an awesome number. I don't think we've had a Utah quarterback do that. Did Tyler Huntley do it? I'm not entirely sure. But before him, I mean, it was definitely before, like, I got into grade school. So I can't remember the last time I've seen a Utah quarterback at 3,000 passing yards, and I'm really excited for Cam to be the first as long as he can stay healthy and keep performing to the best of his ability.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think we have a really similar stat line for Cam. I'm thinking about 3,080 yards, 25 touchdowns, and let's say, seven picks by the time it's all over. The way I got that number is I think he'll average about 245 yards a game. That's not a low number. It's not a crazy high number, but it's like, I'm sure he's going to have a couple more 210, 215 yards per game. But I almost guarantee you before the season is over, we will have to say, Cam, throw the cape on and get it done one more or maybe 2 more times. And the great thing is I feel confident in Cam doing that. I really do. And so there's probably a 275, 325 yard game somewhere in there. You don't know which game that's going to be, but I do see him. And then, let's see where he's at rushing on the season. I haven't even looked at that. All right, so rushing stats. So he's already got 308 rushing yards in the season. Let's go ahead and I'll just say, 500 rushing yards for Cam once it's all said and done. He runs the ball really well. Why wouldn't we use it? Hey, do you know anything about this? Did Tavion leave the game early? Do you know anything about that, Dante?
I've seen a few speculations about it. Tavion kind of touched on it actually on his own Twitter, and he was kind of saying, like, you guys are speaking before what's actually the truth has come out. But Coach Witt did say that they won't release any like new information as of now unless it's like season ending or game breaking or something like that. So the question with Tavion is really up in the air, but I do not believe he left the game early. But I know he did end up taking his pads off maybe before the clock hit 0 or right when the clock hit 0, and he was very quickly to leave the field, whereas the rest of the team was kind of celebrating and embracing the field rush and the huge win.
Yeah, I saw that video of him jogging off the field. I'm sure everyone's seen that probably, where he's jogging off the field right as the game ends.
Your damage has always been visible.
And he didn't have his shoulder pads on, so it sounds like there is some validity to the fact that he took his pads off before the game was over. I mean, who knows? I'll touch on my Tavion stat prediction in a second and probably talk about that a little bit.
Your audio is playing like the ESPN.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, thanks for the heads up. Better?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Yeah, who knows what's going to happen with Tavion, but I'll touch on that in a second. The next guy, let's talk about Dalton Kincaid. All right, Dalton Kincaid, Utah Utes. All right, what are your thoughts on the rest of the season for Dalton Kincaid, Dante?
He'll break 1,000. I really want him to, first of all. I really think he will. Currently 556 or 58 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns. My prediction was around 1,000 receiving yards and 10 touchdowns. So while I do kind of see him regressing in these games that aren't against huge opponents, like people have to realize Utah played 3 extremely good opponents in the first 7 weeks, which I can't remember the last time that happened to Utah football. And now with the rest of the year coming on, 4 games should be. I hate to say it because it's college football, anything happen. 4 of these games should be pretty easy wins. And then you got the Oregon game. So I do expect Dalton to slightly regress in those lesser known games, but against Oregon, I expect him to have a big one because I expect Utah to be throwing the football a lot. So with that being said, I got around 1,000 receiving yards and 10 touchdowns for Dalton.
Literally the exact same prediction. 1,000 receiving yards. I would even say more than 10 touchdowns now that Keithy's gone and he looks so damn good. Let's go with 12 touchdowns. I'll have some fun with it.
I like it.
The next guy on the list here is all right. Next guy on the list is going to be Devon Vele. Let's put him up here. He had a pretty good game last week, solid game last week, but there he is. That was weird. All right, Devon Vele. So pretty good game last week and a good past 3 games. What are you thinking? How does he finish off the season here, Dante?
418. Maybe I went a little bit too crazy with this one, but I said 800 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns. I like Devon a lot. I think his skill set is fantastic. If you watch the route that he ran on that slant touchdown that he had last week, it just shows how great of an athlete he is, and it makes it even more impressive that he's 6'5". I'm all over Devon Vele. I think he's a beautiful, just a fantastic receiver, a beautiful player for this Utah football team. I think he can get around 800 yards. I really do. In those games where Dalton, I don't think is going to be too much in the equation. I think he's probably one of the guys that gets taken out first. Say Utah's up 20 plus at halftime, whereas Devon, I think they kind of still want to see a little bit more from him, just because he's not having that type of year that Dalton's having. And everyone's talking about the Utah wide receivers needing to be involved more. And when Utah is kind of exploring new things with their offense, when they're up by a wide margin, I expect Devon to be kind of a point of emphasis when it comes to that. So I got Devon Vele around 800 receiving yards and 6 receiving touchdowns.
Cool. I've got a pretty similar stat line. I'm less than you in one, more than you in the other. So I have him at 725 receiving yards. I think that would still be a very good average each game and, kind of keep on pace with what he's been doing over the last 4 or 5 where he's kind of come into his own. And then I see him with 9 or 8 receiving touchdowns. So only one game where he doesn't get a receiving touchdown. That is one thing I've noticed over these past few games. He does feel like he does get into the end zone. He got into the end zone against USC as well. So that's what I see for Devon Vele. And now Tavion Thomas. Let's go ahead and put him up. Now, this has been a guy, if we were talking about individual players, and I'm not trying to make Tavion feel bad. So, if he is watching this, probably not, but if he is watching this, not trying to make you feel bad, but obviously this year has not gone the way last year went at this point in the year. Dante, what are your thoughts on how this season finishes for Tavion?
And I'm really hoping he comes back because I was all over him coming off the UCLA game. I thought he looked really good, which he did. He did look very good. And whereas this game, only 8 carries, 28 yards. I don't want to dive too deep into that because of the way the game was going for Utah. They didn't really give him a fair chance to really establish the run just because of how much throwing was going on due to the circumstances of the first quarter, first half of the game kind of. So I don't want to bag on him or say that he looked bad because I really don't think he did. I just don't think he really got a fair shot to explode for a run or get really cooking in terms of the rushing attack. So I'm gonna go out on a limb. I'm gonna say he has a good second half of the season. 850 rushing yards, 11 rushing touchdowns, because we know peak Tavion Thomas is one of the best running backs in college football. This guy didn't grade out top 5 running back in the nation per PFF for no reason. When he's on his A game, he is a very good running back, bulldozer, everything you want from a lead running back in one of these running back kind of committees that Utah has. So I'm going to go bold. I think Tavion has a good second half of the season, 850 rushing yards, 11 rushing touchdowns.
All right. And I'm feeling a little differently. I trust me. Just so you guys understand, I was one of the biggest Tavion fans coming into this year, but it really feels like, just especially what I was seeing on Twitter, it feels like he's really in his head right now. Like it really does. Like making those kind of posts. So you got to imagine behind the scenes, it's just not going super well. Larry said he's at wit's end. Yeah, and from what I've heard is behind the scenes is, I don't know everything that goes on behind the scenes, but I've heard from some sources that Tavion's, a bit of a diva at times. From what I hear, that's not me. I've heard that, and I think last year he was doing so well that some of that was able to go under the rug. But right now that he's not playing at a super high level, it's kind of coming to the surface a little more, and they're probably not dealing with it as much as they usually do. I still see him having a decent second half of the year, but I don't see him exploding away with the number one job. I'm thinking about 650 rushing yards and maybe, nine touchdowns. Probably get a few more touchdowns, but I don't see him really taking away the rushing job. And obviously that'll affect what I think is going to happen with the next guy. So let's go ahead and talk about the next guy. The Utah fan favorite, Mekhi Bernard. Excuse me. A guy that's had a bit of a slow start to the season, but I also want to touch on Tavion too. I think Tavion's probably frustrated with that offensive line. He's got to be. I mean, that's got to be a conversation behind the scenes. The way they are just not opening holes. And I'm not saying it's never, and there's been games where they did a good job, but there are lots of games like USC, the game script didn't call for running, but it was rough, dude. Like Cam could run the ball, but when they tried to give it to a running back, it was like in the backfield or right at the line. Like the O-line needs to do better for the running backs. But what are you thinking about Mekhi Bernard?
Yeah, Mekhi's is definitely an interesting player because you don't know what his role is going to be in the rushing attack, and you always know he's going to be kind of that safety blanket in the passing game. Whenever Cam Rising needs an easy completion, he'll go right to Mekhi Bernard because that's just what he does. He'll do anything for this program. He'll do anything for this team. He's kind of like the glue guy, if you will. So in terms of rushing, I'm going to go around 500 rushing yards, maybe a little bit less, maybe around 450, somewhere in that range, because in the chance that Tavion ends up not coming back with the team, he's going to be the lead back, and he'll probably explode for way more than 450 in that case. But assuming he's going to take on a similar role that he has now, I think the average yards per attempt will definitely go up. I think this Utah offensive line, in terms of run blocking, is kind of at rock bottom. Like, you can really only go up from here. So expecting them to get a little bit better, and also Mekhi's average yards per attempt to go up with that being said. And for him to stay around that 8 to 11 carries per game region. And with that being said, I do think that he'll be right around 450, 500 rushing yards and 4 rushing touchdowns. And then in terms of receiving, I'm going to go 36 receptions, 350 receiving yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns. He doesn't have one on the year yet, which is kind of surprising given his workload, but I do think he'll end up hitting pay dirt a couple of times in the receiving game. And then, like I said, he's also always going to be the kind of that safety blanket whenever Cam needs an easy completion. He'll go right to Mekhi. And with that being said, 36 receptions, 350 receiving yards. I don't think that's too much of a stretch. I think that's a very fine season for Mekhi, and that's around 800 total yards for the season and 6 total touchdowns, which is pretty dang impressive.
Yeah, I've actually got a really similar prediction. So right now he's at about 400 all-purpose yards in the year. I didn't look at it too much with rushing with Mekhi. I was thinking, more all-purpose yards because he's just as much a receiving threat as a rushing threat. I see him getting about 8, maybe not quite 800, like 750 all-purpose yards. That'd be a lot per game to get to 800. And let's just say he gets, 750 all-purpose yards. And how many touchdowns does he have already? 2, and then any receiving. Okay, so 2 or 0 receiving. So let's say 4 more touchdowns all-purpose. So, Mekhi's one of my favorite players on the team for sure. Larry, and I saw your post when I was talking about Tavion, where poor guy is giving up millions if he doesn't get it together. Yeah, that's what frustrates me the most, man. I really hope he figures that out because I would hate to see this be a downward spiral for him because it really felt like to me if he would have declared last year that he would have been a draft pick. I don't know where he would have been drafted, but he would have been a draft pick. I was surprised no one was talking about that. But outside of that, it has been awesome getting to chat with you, Dante. Anything you want to say before we get out of here?
Really just enjoy the stress-free week. Great slate of college football on like always. So if you want to watch any other games, it's a perfect weekend to do so because Utah will be living in your head rent free. And then it's on the next week pesky game against the Cougars, but I think the Utes come out with a W, and I'm assuming most people do as well. So thanks for tuning in, everyone. Have a great rest of your week.
Hey, thanks so much, Dante. I'm going to drop you off, man. I'm going to stay on for a few more minutes, guys. But hey, you have a great one, man. Enjoy the bye week and enjoy the time off. I'll talk to you next week.
Appreciate it.
All right, guys, and thank you so much to Dante for coming on. If you guys aren't already following him, make sure you guys give him a follow. I'll drop his handle on the screen here, just so if you guys are interested in giving – oh, damn it. I erased it. But make sure you guys give him a follow. And I do have the winner of the 2 signed Utes cards. And Omar, if you're watching this, the card, the Brent Keithy signed auto, is on the way to you, man. It is on the way. So you should have that soon. Larry says, thanks, Dante. Yeah, Dante's a cool guy, man. I appreciate him coming on here. So the winner of the signed auto, let me pull him up. I know I already found out who it is. It's a guy. So if you didn't already know that, it is a guy. Oh, here he is. The winner of the 2 Utah Utes autos, Bradley and I, and Chase Hansen, is going to be Spencer Shuppy. Spencer, I'll shoot you a message on Twitter right now. But he is the one that won the competition, and really cool to be able to get him that. You won the cards. All right. And outside of that, guys, please do. Please do make sure you guys do like the video before we get out of here. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I won't put out. I do have another card that I am going to be giving away. I won't put it out yet what the actual competition is, but I'll give you guys a little sneak peek. I'm just going to flash it on the screen for a second. It's another Utes signed auto. This will be for a little, this will be for probably next week when we go to Washington State. All right, you ready? You guys ready? All right, here we go. All right, and that's a little sneak peek. I'm sure you guys saw who that was, but it's a pretty cool Utes signed auto that one of my favorite players from last year. So if you guys are interested in winning that, stay tuned. I'll be giving it away after the bye week, and I wish you guys the best. Seriously, guys, I love hanging out with you guys, and thanks so much for tuning in. I'm out of here. See you guys later.